Welcome to Tanversations. I'm Tanya, a 20 something working in venture capital and excited about the Web3 space. In this podcast, I'm going to be diving into the biggest questions that I have, mostly about work, but also about life and everything in between, by turning to my elders that include venture capitalists, experts, entrepreneurs, writers, philosophers, activists, and even 26-year-olds. So grab your pumpkin spice lattes, kombucha, iced coffee, and 16th other beverage as we go through these conversations together. Eric is the CRO and COO of Swirlds Labs, the team that built Hedera. Hedera is a decentralized open source public ledger. Its technology can be used as an alternative to blockchain. Eric has been in the Web3 space for many years and was also the force behind building and leading the first global blockchain team at Deloitte in 2013. In this interview, he talks about his journey, how blockchain has evolved from when he first started, what made him join Swirlds Labs, and what he's excited about for the coming year. So, thank you so much for coming on to my podcast. Really excited to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Tanya.
Yeah. I'd love to start off by learning more about your journey and how you got into Web3.
So my journey is quite long. You can hear, I was born in France many decades ago. I moved to the US in 2001, and I was working for a large pharma company. Then I worked for Deloitte for many years. I started the blockchain practice for Deloitte back in 2013, so 10 years ago, and did a little bit of a startup, and then went to join IBM for 3 years. And for the last 9 months now, I've been working with Swirlds Labs, which is the team behind Hedera. And we'll talk about Hedera, I'm sure. But yeah, so my journey into Web3 started back in 2013 when I was at Deloitte, and we were starting to realize that clients, large banks in particular, were starting to ask questions about what should we do with blockchain, what should we do with crypto and Bitcoin. Is that going to change the way we operate, the way we do business, whether we are in supply chain, whether we are in financial services? So we started working on this. And next thing you know, we had one of the best team in the world working on those topics at Deloitte. So that was an exciting start for many of us at that time.
Yeah, for sure. And 2013 is really like, OG, because there were very few people who were working in the space back then. So at the time, when you first got introduced to the technology and you had just started using it, what was your kind of first impression of blockchain? Was it truly in that moment where you were like, oh, this is the next big thing? Or was it just something like, oh, this is a new technology, we can experiment with it, see how it goes?
So it was interesting because the word blockchain did not exist in 2013,
Yeah.
right? So in 2013, we were talking about Bitcoin. We were talking about, the beginning of the crypto market. So it was very early
Yeah.
days. And what was interesting to me is this idea of preventing double spending, right? That was really the trigger for me. Every year during the end of the year Christmas break, I pick a topic, and I'm spending a little bit of time because the rest of the world is slowing down. I'm spending a little bit of time on digging a little bit into that topic. And so back in 2012, in December, I picked that white paper that we all know now from Satoshi
Yeah.
Nakamoto, and I said, okay, I need to understand more about this. And at the end of the break, I was convinced that there was something that's going to really change the world, and not just for payments, because Bitcoin originally was a payment solution, but for many other industries. And so that was really the trigger for me. That was this idea of having a system that would outlive us as humans, as long as we have computers running, and really removing intermediaries from being needed into a lot of business processes. And so I was very excited by that. My clients were excited and nervous about this too, because they were like, okay, my job is to be an intermediary, and
Yeah.
I might lose my job, right? Turns out it's a long process before that happened, because even 10 years after, we are still, not removing a lot of intermediaries. We are creating new ones, but we're not removing, which is fine, which is good. So that was kind of the trigger for me, right? That was before the word blockchain existed.
Yeah.
And then over time, what's happening is you get into the topic, you get to talk to your clients, whether it's telecommunication, banking, and insurance, loyalty and rewards. Back then, we did a project for one of the largest hotel chain in the world, on loyalty and rewards using blockchain. So a lot of different ways to engage, and then you realize that, one, you were kind of right, things are going to change, which is good validation, but also
Yeah.
that it is a very complex change because it's touching us at the transfer of value between different parties. And when you transfer information, which was the age of Web 2, when you transfer information, um, it is not as critical as if you transfer value, right? So transferring information can be reversed in a way, right? Transferring value, if you mess it up, maybe you cannot reverse it, right? So
Yeah.
that was a pretty different um, bar to pass in order to get adoption. And so no surprise really that it takes a long time to adopt blockchain technologies. But I think we are really at the end of the first phase, if you want, right? The first phase was really understanding, adopting, piloting, POCs, all of those things. And from an enterprise adoption, we are now at the end of that. And now we have real organizations using real solutions on blockchain technologies, which is very exciting.
Yeah, 100%. And I also wanted to understand, so back then, I'm sure, when you went to your clients and you were talking about this new technology, their reaction would have been a lot more different to what it is, say, even 3 or 4 years ago, when you kind of went up to them and were like, this is the technology and we feel like you should integrate it into your business. So back then, what was their reaction? Did they just kind of dismiss it, or were they curious, or was it a lot of enterprises were actually wanted to be early adopters?
Yeah, I think it was a mix. But I tell you an interesting story. What we were doing when we were pitching to very large organizations, right? Because Deloitte is
Yeah.
very large organization, serving very large organizations. We were looking at the number of times in the annual reports or quarterly calls with analysts that the CEO or the CFO was actually mentioning blockchain. And so we were counting the number of times, and then we were going to that team, to that company, and we were saying, your CEO mentioned blockchain 6 times on the analyst call last week. You should do something about it, right? So we were playing a little bit that game. I think it was, I would say, 50%. It was because everybody was talking about blockchain that everybody had to do something with blockchain, right? It was not really a business driven decision. It was more driven by the energy and the excitement around the technology. And so that's typical in innovation, right? The first phase is really about excitement and engaging and learning. And then we went into the first crypto winter that I remember was 2018, and in 2018 everybody stopped, right? So we were looking back at those reports from analyst reports and CEO calls and stuff like that, and blockchain was nowhere to be seen on those reports anymore. And so we stopped engaging with selling blockchain, if you want, and we were engaging with selling a solution to a business problem, right? Whether it's traceability in supply chain, whether it's accelerating cross-border payments, whether it's building a new loyalty and reward platform, tokenization of assets. So we were not talking about the underlying technology anymore. We were talking about the business angle and how and what can you do with that technology. And that's when the industry matured quite a bit, because now you have to really build a business case. You have to justify why you're going to spend money, why you're going to put resources to it. So that was a very interesting time too. That was, again, kind of the validation for us that we made the right choice to invest in that technology. and also the validation that the market was not now really thinking about it in a real way. That's when the first really adoption started.
Yeah. And so at Deloitte, you also built like the first global blockchain team, right? What was the process like that for you?
So, I mean, Deloitte is a very large organization, and Deloitte has four different businesses, and so you don't do that on your own, right? You never do something on your own anyway. But within Deloitte, that was very exciting because you do that with others. You do that with partners, other partners in different groups, other people in different regions. So that was probably one of the best thing I've done, intellectually and engaging at Deloitte. That was super interesting to start this, to see that there is a potential, and then go and talk to a lot of people that people in this industry would know, like Rob Massey, who's still at Deloitte, who's still doing a lot of work in tax for a lot of clients. Most of those clients are very well known in crypto, and Rob started at the same time as me, and so we built that practice together, and many others. Right, I'm just mentioning him because he's very visible in the market. People might know him, and so it wasn't other ways. It's a team effort. You do that with a team. You do that with different partners inside the firm, inside Deloitte, and outside of Deloitte as well. That's when back in the day, we were meeting with, Reaper when there were three people. We were meeting with R3 when there were two people. We were meeting with, all of those firms, all of those firms that now we know very well. But back then, it was a very, very small team for each of them. So it was an exciting time for sure when we started this.
Yeah, 100%. And then what made you move into like actually working with a singular project right now?
So it was interesting. So 10 years into it, I looked back, and if you remember at this time last year, everybody was talking about generative AI, right? ChatGPT was just being launched, and so I was super impressed, super interested, like many others. And really, what I did, like, just a side note, but what I really liked about ChatGPT is not as much the ability to create content on the fly. It was really the demonstration that asking the right question was actually a skill. And I always thought of that. I always thought it's better to have the right question than to have the right answer. And I think ChatGPT was kind of that haha moment for me. It was like, see, I told you, asking the right question is actually important. And then I was considering the next adventure. I decided to stay in blockchain because I really still believe in the potential of that technology. And that was the time where you go across the industry and you look at different projects, you reconnect with friends, and you understand what's happening. And then I came across Hedera, which has been around for 5 years. They started in 2018, and really enjoyed the discussion I had with Mance and Lehman, the two co-founders of Hedera. Really enjoyed the discussion with the rest of the team that I was talking to understand what they were working on. And at the end of the day, when you look at Hedera, it is a platform designed for businesses, for enterprise, by enterprises, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and also very focused on making a long-term impact as opposed to trying to make a quick buck with a token, right? So I think that was super interesting to me, because at this stage I want to build something that lasts. I want to build something that's relevant, and that was the right time, the right team. So yeah, I joined Hedera of Swirlds Labs, which is the team behind Hedera, about 9 months ago now.
Yeah. And so for people who might not know what Hedera does, can you give a quick introduction about what
Yeah,
Hedera is,
sure.
what problem you're trying to solve?
So Hedera is the layer one, and we say blockchain, but it's actually not technically a blockchain. It's based on the hash graph algorithm that Lehman Bears invented. And so the value of that hash graph algorithm or hash graph technology is that the speed of transaction on the network is much higher than the traditional blockchain. So we are a layer one that can uh, uh, um, process more than 10,000 transactions per second, which no other layer one is able to do that, mostly because they're not designed to do that, right? If you look at the Ethereum or the Bitcoin blockchain, for example, they are not designed to do this at all. So it's not a surprise that they don't deliver this because they were not designed to do this. We were designed to be able to do that. And because it's a layer one, you can still build a lot of things on the top of it and benefit from that, high speed transaction platform. So that's number one. I think number two, which is also very unique, is that the transaction fees on the network are not in crypto, but are in USD, in dollar, right? So when you ask to transact on the platform through an API call, and we have different types of API calls, you pay based on a dollar number, right? So you pay a fraction of a cent when you do a consensus call, for example, on the platform. Yeah. And if the value of H bar, which is the cryptocurrency behind Hedera, if the value of H bar changes, which it does, like any other crypto, the cost you pay for that transaction still remain the same in US dollar, which gives a tremendous advantage when you build business solutions, because when a business is building a new platform, you need to know how much you're going to pay for a transaction. That's how you build your business case. You cannot build a solid business case if you don't know how many dollars or how many crypto you're going to pay tomorrow and the day after when you engage with the platform. And so that design decision was very, very important. And that makes Hedera very, very unique. So that's number two. And then number three is the construct of the governance. The governance structure of Hedera is very unique as well. It is based on a council of members, and we have 30 members today. And those members are very well-known organizations like Google, like IBM, like DBS in Singapore. And many of them joined the network because they saw the benefit of joining the network. And what they do is they just not give their logo to the project. They actually run a node of Hedera themselves, and they are the only one running those nodes. So when you look at this, you're like high-speed transaction, fixed cost for the transaction that I'm using, backed by major organizations across the globe, right, and across industries. It's a public network, but it's a permission network because only those 30 members can run a node. And it gives a very strong sense of confidence when you build a new business platform, right? I couldn't find another platform that would give me, as a business leader, that would give me the confidence to build. And so that was the reason I joined Hedera, in addition to the team. But that's also a tremendous business value when we talk to our clients, right, across industries and across use cases. So that's really the differentiator.
Yeah, 100%. So obviously, it sounds like the technology behind Hedera is solving a lot of problems that come with normal blockchain. But what do you think the biggest challenges are when it comes to Hedera and its mainstream adoption?
I think our value, our focus on enterprise market is also a challenge, because typically in the Web3 world, people are excited about NFTs. People are excited about making money quickly. So you have a lot of retail activity and retail interest, and typically we don't go after that because that's not the way we operate. However, over the last few years, we actually did go into those markets, not because it was a good way to generate revenue for the network and so on, but because we were getting a lot of input. People were saying, "You're good for enterprise, you're good for corporations, but you're also probably very good for NFTs and very good for fan engagement and loyalty programs, right? Over time we ended up serving different industries, and so we turn a little bit of our challenge being focused on the enterprise market into a benefit, because who would not want a solid platform when you pay a very low fee in dollar when you build your own solution, right? Anyone would benefit from that. And
Yeah.
so now we're getting that traction. But I think originally we were kind of very much focused on the enterprise market, which was kind of a little bit of a limitation for us. Um, and something else I think that's really important is the staying true to the original idea is also very important, right? And when the co-founders, Mance, Harman, and Lehman Bears, when they started this project, they came up with a set of principles that would be core to the platform, to the network, and they never changed. They were very consistent in pushing that vision and those principles across every single time they had to make a decision. Some of them were big decisions. They were very true to their core values, and I think that reflects into the network, and it's very important when you build those innovative platforms, because that's how you build trust. You build trust by being true to your original vision and your values along the way. So that's really important.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like it's not that common, unfortunately, in the crypto industry, at least at the moment. But do you feel like, as the industry matures and, we have more regulations which are going to come in, or we're going to find this more and more where people, instead of making like a quick buck, actually want to build long-term sustainable businesses and actually want to grow the ethos of Web3, which is about financial inclusion and things like that.
For sure. I think those big cycles of innovation typically take time,
Yeah.
and everybody is talking about ChatGPT and generative AI today, but that journey started 20 years ago, right? So we just happen to be now exposed to this at scale, but the journey of generative AI started a long time ago. I think blockchain was more visible from the start because of that crypto angle. But I think now you have a significant maturation. And when you think of Web3, you think of the transformation of what it means to be a owner of something, right? So the transformation of ownership is really what Web3 is about. You transform the fact that now you own your own data and you decide what you're going to do with your data, as opposed to a social media platform. And you own your assets directly yourself, instead of trusting two or three or four or 20 third parties to manage the ownership of your asset. So that concept of ownership is completely changing with Web3, and I think we're going to see tremendous changes across the board, not just in the industry space, in the enterprise space, because that notion of ownership is going to change. I give you an example of a project I worked on, which was really interesting. It was the idea was, and still is, when you go to engage with a healthcare provider, whether it's a doctor, a nurse, an hospital, a physician, whoever, an insurance company. If you're in the US, you do that more than engaging with your doctor, unfortunately. And when you do that, everybody has a piece of you from a data point of view, but you don't have an aggregation, a consolidation of that data in one place. So no one, including you, have a full picture of yourself from a health point of view, which is in itself not a good idea, because when you're sick, you need to actually have the entire data set in order to make the right decision. If you don't, you might make the wrong decision, right? Whether it's an issue with drug interaction, for example. So this notion of ownership of data when it comes to health is actually super interesting, and I strongly believe in that vision, that at some point we are going to be in a context where individuals will own that information and decide where to share, for how long, with whom to share this information, and get, at the end of the day, get faster, cheaper, and better healthcare, um,
Yeah.
which is a significant issue worldwide, right? So I'm really excited about this. That's an example of taking ownership of your own data and then generating a much better outcome.
Yeah, 100%. And it's actually pretty crazy to me that it hasn't happened so far, especially with use cases like healthcare, because, especially now, the world has become so global. So you're constantly moving countries, moving cities, and it just, every person I know is so global and always moving around. And it would be so helpful if you could own your own data and you could take that to the next doctor and they would have your entire medical history, which
I
in this moment is like, because I moved from India to Hong Kong and then from Hong Kong to Singapore, and I kept losing my medical history. So, from that perspective as well, I think it would be huge. And
Yeah,
even,
I'll tell you
yeah,
the example of, I told you earlier, I was born in France and I moved to the US. We moved to the
yeah,
US with my kid. And when I arrived in the US after a few years, we decided to become citizens. When you become citizen, you have to show your vaccinations to make sure
yeah,
that you're up to date. And I showed my booklet with all my vaccination in French, and they didn't understand what was on the booklet, so they gave me all the vaccines again.
no,
Um, which was a very good example of why ownership and definition of standards between countries, for example, in that case, is super important because I really didn't need all those vaccines, but I got them anyway, right? So, and that was the only way for me to become a citizen. So that's a little bit of a challenge. It could be a health challenge, but it's really an efficiency issue, right? I'm getting vaccines I don't need. It doesn't feel right in many ways.
yeah, 100%. And I think even on a day-to-day basis, like I'm a content creator, but I feel like because obviously all my content is uploaded on other platforms, so I don't technically own my own content because the platform can just come in and ban me one day, and all my audience, all the content that I've been working on, all of it could just get taken away. So I think, yeah, ownership is probably one of the biggest reasons why Web3 is so important. Uh,
Yep.
so I also did want to backtrack a little bit and
Mhm.
still talk a little bit more about Hedera. So what are
Yep.
some things or exciting updates that you guys have? You did mention that you're looking more and more into the retail space. So are there any other exciting developments with the company and what's happening there?
Yeah. Tanya, I'm losing you. Are you still here? You're
Yeah.
frozen. Oh, there we go. There we go. Yeah. You froze for 20 seconds.
Oh
Yeah. You're
no.
back.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so we are working on many things that are really interesting. First, we are working on um, you know what we call now tokenization of real assets. So tokenization of real assets is you take a piece of real estate, you take a security, equity bonds, or so on. You take an asset and you tokenize it and you expose it to a set of investors who typically do not have access to that asset because it's either that you have to be an accredited investor or you have to have enough money to invest because the minimum is very high, right? 20,000, $500,000, right? So those numbers are pretty common in some markets. And so when you tokenize, you actually do three things. You say, I'm going to actually make that asset more liquid. So the asset owner, the person who owns the real estate, is actually able to transact with those pieces of assets, those tokens, in a much better, faster, and cheaper way. That's number one. Number two is now you give access to those investors. They can invest $100, $200, right, in real estate in a market that they don't have access to typically. And then the second piece is you create a secondary market where people can trade where those assets where typically you can today. Typically, when you buy a piece of real estate, you typically engage in the long-term transaction and you wait a long term to get your return. But if you need the money, you're stuck, right? Which is why many investors don't invest because they don't want to be stuck for such a long time. in the tokenization world, you can create a secondary market and enable individuals to trade what they bought 6 months ago because they need the cash and they need to sell those assets. So all of that is actually, again, an ownership transfer of something, of an asset. And Hedera is working on that with many different use cases across the board. But we do that again for real estate and securities and bond and mutual funds and I'm sure I'm forgetting, but those are the big ones that we are working on. So that's exciting because it's real change, right? It's real impact to investors who did not have access to those markets before. The second one that we are working on is anything that has to do with stablecoin. We launched a few weeks ago the Stablecoin Studio for Hedera, which is an aggregation of technologies, business processes, and business construct and partners. And all of that together creates a studio or an accelerator, if you want, where if you're a bank, if you're a merchant, if you're an organization who's looking to build a stablecoin for different reasons, you come to us and we can help you launch a stablecoin in a matter of days as opposed to months before, right? So that's really exciting because that notion of stablecoin is really, really, really interesting in many different cases, not just for payments. It typically cross-border or a B2B payments. That's where stablecoin are usually used. Sometimes we call that CBDCs. But there is a lot of other scenarios that are really interesting in the banking space, for example, tokenized deposits, right? So that's another angle where we spend quite a bunch of time and really excited about it. And then the third piece, and we have many. I'm picking just big ones. But the third piece that is exciting is anything around fan engagement. And so when you engage with a sport, when you engage with a concert venue, when you engage with tickets to go to that concert, right? Ownership of that ticket, again, the notion of ownership. We spend a lot of time working with different companies to enable those use cases. And the goal here is to make the experience a little bit different. So not just the concert itself, but expand that experience before and after the concert, because now you own, for example, an NFT representing your ticket, but that ticket give you access to, of course, to the concert, but give you access to an experience after the concert. And then you can trade that NFT if you want to with someone else. So you expand the engagement level of that person with the venue or with the artist through the Web3 platform. So super interesting as well. Right? And I'm sure I'm missing a lot of use cases that are super cool too.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. I think particularly the fan engagement one, because I feel like this concept of like semi-fungible tokens has just come around as well, where, of course, the concert ticket itself, it has value, but then after the concert is over, it can also, like you mentioned, open up a lot of experiences that you can enjoy as well. So I
Yeah.
think that's really cool. And what I also wanted to know, because obviously you've been in this space for such a long time, and you've seen it evolve, across so many years. So, what is one trend that you personally are really excited about in the coming few months within the space?
Um, if I have to pick one, I think the one that is really interesting and it's public information is we've seen the beginning of a trend in supply chain,
Mm,
where supply chain organizations are tracking not just the supply chain itself, so tracking where. So the example that's public is Hyundai and Kia, right, the car company. And what they built is a solution where they track the carbon footprint of a car across the supply chain, right? So they start with the suppliers, and they have more than 20 big suppliers. They themselves have suppliers, right? So it's a supply chain, of course. But all of them track every activity and every part that they consume to build a car. And because they track that on Hedera on the public network, at the end of the process, when the car is delivered, they actually know very precisely the carbon footprint of that car.
Oh, wow.
You can say, I'm going to buy that car from Hyundai Kia, and I want to offset the carbon footprint of the car I'm buying, and I'm going to buy carbon credit for that, right? Um, and you can do that because we have Web3 platforms that shows the traceability of all those activities and the traceability of the carbon credit I'm going to potentially buy to make sure I'm not buying something that someone else bought already, right? Um, so that's a very exciting use cases to me because it's really what we are here to change, right? We are here to change behavior. We are here to change the way organization function for the benefit of the planet, for the benefit of humanity. So I think that's an exciting one. If I have to pick one, maybe I pick this one.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think it's super exciting as well. And my last question for you is, so you mentioned that, around Christmas time every year you kind of pick a different topic and you just kind of go deeper into it. Do you already know what yours is going to be for this
No,
year?
it's funny because I thought about that this weekend when I was flying back from Singapore, and I was thinking about which topic am I going to pick. I picked ChatGPT last year, so I cannot pick ChatGPT again or AI. Maybe I should because there is so much happening in that space. Maybe I should pick this one again. But maybe I'll look for advice. I'll ask for help to my friends and ask them which topic should they pick. What do you think I should pick? Which topic is exciting?
It's a good question. I don't have a good answer for it, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot happening in the generative AI space, so I think there's always possibilities there, or even within Web3 also. I think there's always
Yeah,
new things to learn, and it's always evolving so quickly. So yeah,
yeah, true.
tough one.
Maybe I should go back to the Bitcoin white paper or read that again
Yeah.
and get inspired again by this, which is always a cool thing to read. If you haven't read the white paper and your audience, you should because it's really a very interesting piece and it's very short.
Yeah.
Um, and it's very very interesting to read that, especially in the context of 2008 when the financial crisis was happening, and that white paper came at that time. It was very interesting.
Actually, that's a really great idea for an episode, to discuss the white paper with someone. I would
Yeah,
definitely, yeah,
yeah,
good
yeah.
idea.
You should try to get one of the potential Satoshi Nakamoto that are around. Um, and find those names, but yeah, some of them might be Satoshi. Maybe you can find them and ask them to come on the show and talk about the white paper and figure out who they are.
Yeah, 100%. But thank you so much for coming on. It was really great to have you. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for doing the show as well. I enjoy doing it, and I look forward to hearing the answers and reaction to the show too. So thank you.
Yeah.